families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Families Divided TV. In tonight's episode, Randi, who was an expert in narcissism, will be speaking to us on children of narcissistic parents. Children of narcissistic parents are subjected to atrocious levels of abuse that are painfully unjust, neglectful, and heartless. Never knowing where they stand with unpredictable, unaccountable, inconsistent parents, they are left feeling terrified, rejected, isolated, and abandoned. Raised with emotionally unreliable infrastructures, children are deprived of the essential building blocks needed for healthy self-esteem, autonomy, and individuality. For these reasons and more, children become saddled with a lifetime of emotional struggles. Unless treated, they will suffer very difficult lives. Love will continue to be associated with pain, negatively impacting all their adult relationships, and entirely reliant on external validation to tell them who they are. They become very vulnerable, predatory targets. This is a really great episode. I hope that you'll take notes, and I hope you'll listen very closely to what Randi has to tell us today. Also, if you've never subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can do so. Just hit the subscribe button. And also, if you want to be notified when we put new information or videos up, and we do that regularly, hit the bell and we'll notify you when new things are put on our YouTube channel. And we'll be back in just a moment, right after these messages with Randi Fine.
Divorce and co-parenting are a major life interruption for families, especially the kids, but also for parents and grandparents. And it's even worse in blame-filled, high-conflict cases. When parents engage in alienation by turning the kids against the other parent or grandparents, kids suffer. They're denied the opportunity to build the 4 big skills necessary for future resilience. New Ways for Families online class can help. Parents learn to use our popular BIF and EAR skills to calm the conflict and stop the hostile emails and texts. And we even have a class for kids and parents to learn together. Research shows a 75% improvement in joint parental decision-making after this course is taken, plus overall improvements for kids' well-being. Don't wait to make this affordable investment in your children's future and improve your well-being too. Start learning new ways for your family today at conflictplaybook.com.
My name is Randi Fine, and I am a narcissistic abuse expert and coach to clients worldwide. Today I'm going to be talking about the impact that narcissistic parents have on their children. The impact is huge, and there are many things that happen, but I really want to start with the physiological thing that happens, because I don't think that many people are aware of the physiological damage that happens to children's brains when they are exposed to this kind of abuse, emotional abuse, other abuse too, physical, verbal, sexual. It can be all of the above. But I talk about this in my book, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind. There's a whole chapter that I've devoted to the physiological impact of child abuse on the developing brain. And what the child goes through is unhealthy stress. And the biological processes that are supposed to switch the stress off do not. And it gets overwhelmed and malfunctions, and then the brain's reaction to stress becomes faulty. And when the brain's reaction to stress becomes faulty, there are constant levels of cortisol flooding the body. Not only do they flood the body, they flood the mind. And this causes damage to the child. And I want to read you something out of the book. In August 2014, the American Journal of Psychiatry published a 10-page study entitled Gray Matter Abnormalities in Childhood Maltreatment. The study shows a reduction in the brain's gray matter, a part of the brain that undergoes development and growth during childhood and adolescence. So included in the report was the following. Modern neuroimaging methods such as MRI have revealed smaller volumes in several brain regions in individuals exposed to childhood maltreatment relative to unexposed comparison subjects, including the prefrontal cortex, hippocampus, amygdala, anterior cingulate cortex, corpus callosum, and cerebellum, suggesting that frontolimbic areas may be the most compromised. The findings thus demonstrate that childhood maltreatment is associated with abnormalities in the right orbitofrontal temporolimbic region that form the paralimbic system, which is known to be implicated in affect and motivational processing and the self-regulation of social emotional behaviors. I'm starting off with that. I'm actually going to back up and tell you some of the very specific things that children experience in these environments. But I just wanted you to know that this is not just a little bit of emotional abuse, and it's not something that children can really survive and come out of. There is going to be some damage that results from this, and I don't say that to make anybody feel bad or to deter anybody from knowing more. I say it because it creates an emotional regulation response. And so a lot of adult children of narcissistic abuse will have problems regulating their emotions. They may be more prone to depression and things like that. However, that can be worked through. Awareness is the most important thing. And that's why I say that. But children of narcissistic parents are subjected to horrific levels of abuse that leave them feeling terrified, rejected, isolated, and abandoned. These children are raised with emotionally unreliable infrastructures, and they are deprived of the essential building blocks needed for healthy self-esteem, autonomy, and individuality. I always say it's like the child's infrastructure is built like a house of cards. It's so precarious. It's built up and it falls down, and it's built up and it falls down. It's a very difficult way for a child to exist. And the home life of children living in this kind of environment is loveless, chaotic, confusing. It's volatile and unpredictable. Narcissistic parents want to keep control over their children, and they work relentlessly to maintain it. Therefore, boundaries, which allow separate and independent selves in the children, are forbidden. So children grow up in these homes without any sense of boundary, and many of the clients that come to me don't even know what a boundary is, what it feels like, and they think it's mean to set boundaries. But boundaries are very healthy, and in a home that is not abusive, children learn these kind of skills for life. Children growing up with a narcissistic parent, they know that their family operates by a set of unspoken rules that feel confusing and painful, and they know their feelings don't matter. The only stability they can acquire comes from adhering to the narcissistic parent's agenda. Children of narcissistic parents are considered extensions of their parent. The child's job is to realize the unfulfilled dreams, fantasies, wishes of the parent. They not only need to fulfill them, they need to conform to them too. Because narcissistic parents think that children exist only for their benefit. They do not see children as people in their own rights. The children's needs and concerns are always ranked below the needs and concerns of the narcissistic parent, though the narcissistic parent will conceal that viewpoint because they want to keep narcissistic supply flowing. But believing that their child is property, these parents feel entitled to mold the child into the ideal image of whatever they want that child to be. So the child is not accepted for who they are and what their potential is. It's up to the parent decides in their mind what this child is going to be, what they're not going to be. And so children must perform to their parents' ever-changing hoops. You know, it's you're going to have to edit this. Narcissistic parents think that children only exist for their benefit. They do not see children as people in their own rights. Children's needs and concerns are always ranked below the needs and concerns of the parent, though that viewpoint is concealed to keep the narcissistic supply flowing. They believe that their child is property, and they feel entitled to mold the child into the ideal image of whatever he or she wants that child to be. The child must perform to the parent's ever-changing and never clear standards. It's like the goalpost keeps moving. And so the child never really can catch on. They can never really figure out how they're supposed to act, what is expected of them, because it changes. And just when they figure out what's expected, the goalpost moves. Whatever the parent does, the narcissistic parent does, is considered a sacrifice. And children always have a debt to pay. Many adult children will tell me when I ask them what their childhood was like, and they say, well, my parents weren't the best. Maybe they haven't identified the parent as being narcissistic, but they'll always say, but they sacrificed everything for me. And so my next question is, what have they sacrificed? And generally, it's the things that are basically legally expected of a parent. They put a roof over my head, they fed me, they got me to school, they took me to the doctor or whatever like that. But narcissistic parents make children think that these are sacrifices that they do as parents. And so the children always feel beholden to them. Whatever the child achieves is owned by the parent too. So, whether it be, the parent may say, well, it's my genetics that got you successful or made you successful in this area. Or maybe they said, well, I nagged you until you did it. Or maybe they say, well, that talent comes from my side of the family. But the achievements only matter if they please the parent or give the parent bragging rights. So children who do not give parents bragging rights are generally pushed to the side because they have nothing to offer. Bragging rights help the parent to get narcissistic supply, which is what feeds them constantly. And they only want children that supply that. And children know that. So children are forever beholden to the parent. They know that love is conditional. They're never loved for who they are, only how well they can please and accommodate the parent. And the fact that the parent can be nice from time to time is a constant source of confusion for children. They learn that kindness and generosity always comes with strings attached. They want to believe they're loved, and they will deny what's happening to them. Therefore, buy into the deception over and over, because the truth of how their parent feels about them, they know this is not unconditional love. They know they have to perform for the love. And the truth of accepting that parent for who they are and accepting that this parent does not really have the capacity to give them unconditional love is very painful to accept. But even when they do catch on, even when the dynamic becomes obvious, children know no other way to be loved. This is how they grow up. Favor shown by the parent is fleeting. If they are displeased with one child, they will ice that child out and woo another one. And children don't recognize this treatment as abuse. It's all they know. It's what they know. Their perceptions have been blurred and invalidated by tactics like gaslighting. Several other tactics of control are employed: codependent control, guilt, narcissistic rage, and withdrawal of love. So codependent control is used to control, to create a dependent relationship between the parent and child, to keep the parent at the center of the child's universe. Guilt is deliberately used to pit the child's sensitivities against them. Narcissistic rage is used to make children understand that if they do not adhere to the rules and the beliefs and the opinions, the orders, instructions, the punishment is going to be severe, because narcissistic rage is terrifying even for other adults, but it is extremely terrifying for children, and they never want to experience it again. So they become subservient. And then the other one, withdrawal of love, is emotional blackmail. The parent creates subservience by showing love and kindness. They indulge the child, but then at any given moment, they will yank it all away. The message is, I will only love you if you do everything my way. It's a very sad way for children to grow up. Their feelings and their rights and their thoughts are not acknowledged. This can lead to much bigger problems for children. They learn to repress these feelings to keep the peace in the house. And they absorb and internalize whatever the parent tells them. So if they're told they are to blame for everything, they believe they're to blame for everything. If they are told they're never good enough, they never feel good enough. If they're told they're stupid, they believe they're stupid. And if they're told they're bad, they think they're bad. And these become their truths and define them. Not only do they define them in childhood, but they define them in adulthood, until an adult realizes that the way they feel about themselves, that these messages were just put in there to hurt them, to control them, they will continue following along in that way. If they feel like, if they were told they're losers, they will perform as losers for the rest of their life until they catch on and fix that. Children never know where they stand with unpredictable, unaccountable, inconsistent parents. No coping mechanisms are modeled or taught. So children are unequipped to process their turbulent home environment. Because of this, their subconscious mind will take over. Its job is to protect them and to make sure that they can survive in this environment until they're old enough to get out. But where boundaries should exist, walls are built. And these walls give the child internal places to hide. But over time, these walls become fortresses that the feelings that are never dealt with are trapped behind. And until they are addressed, these buried emotions will stay there, creating a lifetime of havoc, wreaking havoc in them. Children cannot exist in a climate of instability and erratic surprise attacks, which is something that is always happening with a narcissistic parent. There are going to be extremely negative consequences to this. These chaotic, drama-laden households cause a lifetime of damage. And so the children are saddled with all these emotional struggles. That's why adult recovery from narcissistic childhood abuse is so very difficult. Dependent, helpless children, suffering emotional and sometimes physical victimization, are really imprisoned in these environments until they're old enough to leave. But even so, they become paralyzed by the insecurity, dependency, and guilt complexes that they've gotten from the parent. And so find it very difficult to leave home even when they are adults. Narcissistic childhood abuse creates underachievers and overachievers. It creates weight issues, eating disorders in children. A lot of the things that they grow up with are a result of this narcissistic abuse in childhood. And I want to mention here that, there's, in an intact family, there is another parent. And the children usually see that parent as the good one or the loving one. But that parent cannot compensate for what is being done to them. And that's really hard because many parents will stay in these relationships even though they're being abused and they know their children are not being treated properly. They'll stay in these relationships to make sure that the children are okay, not realizing that for every moment they stay, more damage is being caused. So they are, in essence, the good parent, but they cannot compensate. The narcissist takes full control of the family dynamics. Children are changed forever as a result of growing up in these environments. And when they get into adult relationships, love continues to be associated with pain and conditions. So their adult relationships are negatively affected. All adult children of narcissists struggle with similar issues. And I want to go over some of those things because I think it's important to talk about. Okay. All right. Adult children of narcissists, and they're referred to ACONs, ACONS, all struggle with these issues. They are always searching for the self, deprived by autonomy by parents who dictated how they should act and feel. They never become their own person. They do not know who they are as individuals and what is best for them. Therefore, they allow others to define them. And this is what I call requiring external validation. And external validation sets us up for predators to come into our life when we're constantly needing somebody to tell us who we are. They believe they're flawed. They're not good enough, not smart enough, not good looking enough, and they are socially unacceptable. They are never sure how others will perceive them or if they even fit in. Since they place a great deal of emphasis on what others think of them, they often get taken advantage of. These insecurities make them vulnerable to victimization by other narcissists or those with similar agendas, which is what I just said. No matter how old they are, children of narcissistic parents never feel like grown-ups. And it's since their parents sabotage their stages of emotional development, they do not mature in ways other children have. As adults, they continue to be treated like children by parents who still take ownership of them. When you have a narcissistic parent, they believe they own you for life. Whether you have your own family, your own marriage, you're supporting yourself, they still believe they own you. And any interaction is going to be one of judgment or hostility. Adult children of narcissistic parents experience bouts of extraneous anger, anxiety, depression, or other emotions. Being overcome by thoughts or emotions unrelated to their current reality is a constant reminder of how broken they still are. They have issues with self-love and self-esteem. These feelings of worthlessness and inadequacy are difficult to overcome after years of being told that they were not good enough. They are prone to self-blame, shame, and feelings of loneliness. They always feel humiliated. Any little thing can trigger them into humiliation. They tend to be over-responsible. They often take on more than their share. This is what I was talking about before with the overachievers. They often wonder if something was wrong with them or if they might be going crazy. I hear this all the time. Because it seems that no one is able to understand their feelings or relate to their experiences. People get impatient when they talk about their childhood, and they are told to grow up already or just get over it. Which, if they could, they would. And if they weren't suffering so much, they might be able to get there. But there's so many tactics that have been used on them, and there's so much psychological conditioning, brainwashing, that keeps them stuck in a holding pattern from childhood. They are conflicted about not liking or wanting to be around their parents, even though they often feel protective over their parents, because it is socially unacceptable to not love their parents, yet it is hard to love ones who have treated them so badly and continue to. Terrible guilt feelings arise out of this emotional tug of war. So these are the things that these children experience, and there's so much more, but I have a limited amount of time to be able to talk to you today. There are other things that children go through, but the message that I want to convey is that this causes a lifetime of damage, and it is not irreversible. But the child or the adult child has to become aware of the things that are going on in their life and explore them. And it's very important, if they think there's narcissistic abuse in the family, to work with somebody who is an expert in this area. Because someone like myself, for instance, I work with adult children of narcissistic abuse. I know, based on the story they're telling me as an adult, what happened to them in their childhood. And as we begin to explore it, we bring it out. And often they don't even realize what has happened to them. They only know how it's affecting them in their adulthood. And looking back can be painful, but it's very important. So if you are an adult child of a narcissistic parent, I urge you to do some deep diving with somebody who can help you, who gets it, who understands this. Not everybody gets narcissistic abuse, because if you haven't lived it, if you haven't experienced it, you cannot possibly understand it. You can't learn this in school. There's no training for this. You have to have experienced it yourself to understand how crazy this can be and how there is no logic to explain it. It just is. So I thank you for allowing me to speak to you today about this topic that I'm very passionate about. I really believe that it's important that we correct this, that we give children tools so that they can survive these environments. And really, if the only tools they're getting are coming from the home and they have an abusive parent, they're not going to get the tools. I believe that these are things that should be taught in the school system, many of these things, so that children can become more resistant to the control and power of their narcissistic parent. Thanks again. I really appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
In our next episode, Kenny Weiss talks about the 7 ways we attract a narcissist.